Look at this monkey pretending to serve civilized people. The Arabic words echoed through the marble lobby of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. Khalil Hassan, tech billionaire worth hundreds of millions, didn't bother lowering his voice as he watched the black waitress approach. Zara Williams carried a silver tray of refreshments, her movements elegant despite her simple hotel uniform. She offered the tray with a warm, professional smile. Khalil barely glanced at her before continuing in Arabic. These creatures think they belong in places like this. Disgusting. His associate laughed. At least she can't understand what we're saying. That's when something shifted in Zara's eyes. A spark. A flash of something dangerous. She understood every single word, but she simply maintained that perfect smile, nodded politely, and stepped back with the grace of someone who knew exactly what game was being played. Have you ever watched someone make the biggest mistake of their life without even knowing it? 3 hours later, the hotel's exclusive Arabic Cultural Heritage Gala was in full swing. Diplomats, business leaders, and dignitaries filled the ballroom, their conversations creating a symphony of power and influence. Zara moved silently between tables, refilling water glasses and clearing plates. To the guests, she was invisible. Just another piece of the hotel's flawless service machine. At table 7, tension crackled in the air. Lebanese ambassador Farid Karam sat across from Syrian trade delegate Omar al-Rashid, their voices rising with each exchange. "This is impossible," Ambassador Karam said in English, frustration bleeding through his diplomatic composure. "Without proper translation, we're talking in circles." Omar al-Rashid checked his phone for the 5th time in 10 minutes. "My flight leaves at midnight. If we can't finalize this tonight." Zara slowed her steps, pretending to arrange the centerpiece. In rapid Arabic, she heard the real problem unfolding. The official translator was stuck in traffic from a massive highway accident. These two men were trying to negotiate a $50 million humanitarian aid agreement that would provide clean water infrastructure to 100,000 refugees. But critical cultural nuances were getting lost in broken English. "The children will have to wait another year," Omar said, his voice heavy with defeat. Ambassador Karam pounded his fist on the table. "Unacceptable. But what choice do we have?" Zara's hand froze on the crystal vase. She understood every word they'd spoken, not just the language, but the diplomatic protocols, the regional dialects, even the historical context that shaped their concerns. Her Oxford PhD in Middle Eastern Studies hadn't prepared her for serving dinner, but it had prepared her for exactly this moment. Around the table, other guests began to notice the commotion. Conversations quieted. All eyes turned toward the two frustrated diplomats. Omar started to rise from his chair. "I'm sorry, Ambassador," without proper mediation. That's when Zara made a decision that would change everything. She stepped forward, setting down her serving tray with deliberate precision. The soft clink of crystal against marble seemed to echo through the suddenly quiet ballroom. "Excuse me, gentlemen." Zara's voice carried a quiet authority that cut through the ambient noise like a blade. Both diplomats looked up, startled by the interruption from hotel staff. "I couldn't help but overhear your difficulty with the water purification standards in Article 7. Ambassador Karam blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Without missing a beat, Zara switched to flawless classical Arabic, her accent carrying the refined tones of Lebanese diplomacy. "Ambassador Karam, when you referenced ma'atatin, you meant purified water, meeting true international standards, not simply filtered water as Mr. al-Rashid understood." The air in the ballroom seemed to freeze. Conversations at nearby tables stopped mid-sentence. Omar al-Rashid's mouth fell open. "How did you—" Zara turned to him, seamlessly shifting to Syrian Arabic with perfect regional inflection. "Mr. al-Rashid, your concern about Taqsim al-Masadir, resource distribution, includes not just physical infrastructure but comprehensive training programs for local technicians. This wasn't clear in the English translation. From across the room, Khalil Hassan turned at the sound of fluent Arabic. His confident smile faltered as he recognized the simple waitress commanding the attention of two senior diplomats. "Miss," Ambassador Karam stared at her name tag. "Miss Williams? Do you work in translation services?" "Not officially." Zara pulled a cloth napkin from her apron and began sketching an organizational chart, labeling components in Arabic, English, and French. "But if I may suggest, the infrastructure timeline in Article 12 could be restructured to address both your concerns." Her pen moved with practiced precision. Water treatment facilities in Phase 1, training programs running parallel, not sequential, quality checkpoints that satisfied Lebanese standards while meeting Syrian implementation deadlines. "The legal liability framework shifts between phases," she explained, drawing connecting lines between concepts. "Lebanon maintains oversight during installation. Syria assumes responsibility post-training. Both parties' requirements are met without compromising the timeline." Omar leaned forward, studying the napkin. This actually works. The budget allocations align perfectly. How is this possible?" Ambassador Karam's voice carried a mix of amazement and professional skepticism. "These are highly technical diplomatic protocols." Other guests began gravitating toward Table 7. The energy in the room had shifted from polite dinner conversation to something electric, urgent. Khalil started moving through the crowd, his expression shifting from confusion to something approaching alarm. This wasn't how his carefully ordered world was supposed to work. Zara continued sketching, her movements fluid and confident. "The key is understanding that infrastructure isn't just about pipes and pumps. It's about dignity. When children walk 5 miles for water, they miss school. When mothers spend their days collecting water, they can't work. This project isn't just about clean water. It's about breaking cycles of poverty." "Extraordinary," whispered a woman at the adjacent table. Omar pulled out his phone, showing photos of refugee camps. "Miss Williams, these are the children who will benefit. In our sector alone, 12,000 kids." Zara studied each photo with intense focus. Her professional demeanor softened for just a moment, revealing something deeper. "Then we don't have time for bureaucratic delays, do we?" She added a final note to her sketch. "Emergency protocols, priority, child safety, and school attendance schedules." Ambassador Karam stood slowly. "Miss Williams, in 30 years of diplomatic service, I've rarely seen such precise cultural and technical understanding." He paused. "Who are you, really?" The question hung in the air like incense. Around them, the ballroom had grown quiet, as if the entire room was holding its breath. Khalil reached the edge of their table just as Zara looked up from her napkin. Their eyes met for the first time since his insulting comments in the lobby. Recognition flashed across his face. Then something else. Something that looked like fear. "Dr. Williams," she said quietly, extending her hand to Ambassador Karam. "And I believe we have lives to save." The crystal chandeliers cast shifting patterns across her dark skin as she spoke. The scratch of her pen on linen. The soft rustle of expensive fabric as powerful people leaned in to witness something they'd never seen before. A revolution disguised as room service. As Zara helped the diplomats finalize their framework, the narrator's voice wove through the scene like a gentle current beneath rushing water. Dr. Zara Williams had graduated summa cum laude from Oxford at 24. Her doctoral thesis on linguistic preservation in displaced Palestinian communities had been published in 3 languages. She spoke 7 fluently, understood the cultural nuances that could make or break international negotiations. But brilliance doesn't pay medical bills. When her father, Professor David Williams, was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's at 68, Zara's world shifted overnight. The man who had taught Arabic literature at the local community college, who had filled their home with poetry from Rumi to Darwish, began losing words like scattered leaves. The memory care facility cost $8,000 monthly. His medications, another $2,000. Zara's savings from her research fellowship vanished in 6 months. Her Oxford student loans remained, demanding payment regardless of family tragedy. Academic positions required travel she couldn't afford, not when her father needed stability. Conference presentations and research opportunities meant leaving him alone with strangers who didn't understand that Tuesday was Poetry Day, that he only responded to classical Arabic pronunciation, that certain phrases could bring him back from the fog. So she took the hotel job. Not because she had to, but because it was 12 minutes from Sunrise Memory Care. Every morning before her shift, she'd sit beside his bed and read him verses from Mahmoud Darwish. For those precious moments, his eyes would clear, and he'd recite the lines with her in perfect harmony. "My daughter," he'd whisper in Arabic during his clearest moments, "you are building bridges with words." The hotel uniform became her armor. It was easier to be invisible than to explain why someone with her qualifications was serving coffee to people who assumed intelligence came with the right accent and address. She'd learned to read people's true intentions beneath their words, a skill her father's illness had taught her that no classroom could. When someone's mind fractures, you learn to listen not just to what they say, but to what they mean, what they need, what still reaches them through the darkness. Tonight, watching that aid agreement about to collapse, she couldn't stay invisible. Not when 12,000 children needed clean water. Some bridges are worth revealing yourself to build. Ambassador Karam stood up, his decision made. "Miss Williams, Doctor. Williams, we have an emergency situation. Our translator is stranded indefinitely and we need to present this revised agreement to the full Syrian delegation in 20 minutes. He glanced at his watch, then at Omar al-Rashid. Could you possibly help us facilitate this discussion?" Omar checked his phone again. "My flight to Damascus leaves at midnight. If we can't finalize this tonight, the funding window closes. The refugee camps will have to wait until next year's budget cycle." The weight of that statement settled over the table like a heavy blanket. 12,000 children, another year without clean water. Zara looked down at her hotel uniform, then at the room full of power suits watching their exchange. "I'm not officially credentialed for diplomatic translation. There are protocols, legal requirements." From across the room, other guests had begun to gather. Hotel manager Robert Brooks appeared at her shoulder, looking nervous about the disruption to his carefully orchestrated event. "Is everything all right here?" Brooks asked, his voice tight with professional concern. That's when a young woman approached the Syrian delegation table. Layla al-Rashid, Omar's daughter and coordinator for the refugee camps, spoke in rapid, urgent Arabic. "Please, if you can help us. There are children who walk 5 miles for clean water every day. The girls miss school because they spend all day collecting water instead of learning to read." Zara's eyes met Layla's across the table. Something passed between them. A recognition of shared struggle, of being underestimated, of carrying responsibilities heavier than their years should bear. "How many children in your sector?" Zara asked softly in Arabic. 12,000, and winter is coming. Without proper water systems, we'll lose more to dysentery and typhoid." The professional smile faded from Zara's face, replaced by something fiercer. She began untying her serving apron with deliberate movements. "Mr. Brooks," she said, turning to the hotel manager, "I need to request a brief leave from my serving duties for an urgent humanitarian matter." Her voice carried new authority, the kind that made people step back and listen. "Gentlemen," she addressed the diplomats, "let's go save some lives." As they moved toward the elevator, Khalil Hassan intercepted them. His approach was casual, but his eyes held suspicion and something that might have been a concern for his own reputation. "Excuse me, but is this appropriate?" His voice carried the tone of someone accustomed to being heard. "This is hotel staff, not a professional translator. Are you certain about entrusting such important negotiations to—" He paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. Zara looked at him directly for the first time since the lobby incident. When she spoke, it was in flawless Arabic that matched his Syrian dialect perfectly. "Mr. Hassan, I appreciate your concern for protocol. However, I believe results matter more than assumptions." Then she switched to something that made his face go pale. His native Palestinian sub-dialect, so specific and regional that only someone with deep linguistic training would recognize it. Sometimes the most qualified person isn't the one you expect. Khalil's mouth opened slightly. That dialect was from his grandmother's village, a pronunciation pattern so precise that even other Palestinians might miss its nuances. "How did you—" The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Ambassador Karam gestured for Zara to enter first. "Shall we?" As the doors closed, Khalil remained in the hallway, staring at his own reflection in the polished steel. His worldview had just cracked down the middle. The Meridian Suite embodied power. Mahogany table, leather chairs worth more than most cars, walls lined with awards from international peace organizations. The Syrian delegation of 12 sat on one side, the Lebanese team of 8 on the other. Tension filled the room like smoke. Ambassador Karam cleared his throat. "Colleagues, I'd like you to introduce Dr. Zara Williams, who will be facilitating tonight's discussion." Several delegation members exchanged glances. The kind of looks that spoke volumes without saying a word. Hassan Mahmoud, the senior Syrian delegate with silver hair and 30 years of diplomatic experience, spoke first. In Arabic, his voice carried barely concealed skepticism. "With respect, Ambassador, this is highly irregular. Where are her credentials? Her official certification? This is a $50 million agreement, not a hotel reservation." Murmurs of agreement rippled through both sides of the table. Lebanese delegate Marie Boutros leaned toward her colleague, whispering in French. She assumed Zara wouldn't understand. "This is what happens when Americans try to handle Middle Eastern affairs. They send whoever is available." Her companion nodded. Probably some diversity hire they're parading around. Zara remained standing at the head of the table, hands clasped calmly behind her back. She let the comments wash over her like rain on stone. "I understand your concerns," she said evenly. "Perhaps we could begin by addressing the specific translation issues that created tonight's impasse." Hassan pulled out a thick document bound in official ribbons. His challenge was deliberate, designed to expose her limitations. "Very well. Explain the legal difference between Tafhim al-Sharut and Tafid al-Sharut in Article 15. And detail how each interpretation affects the liability framework under international humanitarian law." The room went silent. This wasn't a basic translation. It was a legal theory that separated professional diplomats from amateurs. For a split second, uncertainty flickered across Zara's face. Several delegates sat back, satisfied that the charade was over. Then she smiled. Not the practiced hotel smile, but something sharper. "Mr. Mahmoud, you're testing whether I understand that tafhim implies making someone comprehend terms they might not grasp, while tafid suggests implementing terms already understood." She moved to the whiteboard, marker in hand. "In legal liability, the first makes us responsible for education and comprehension. The second makes us responsible only for execution. But the real issue isn't the translation." She drew 2 columns, writing in Arabic script. The Lebanese version uses tafhim, while the Syrian text uses tafid. You've created contradictory legal obligations without realizing it. Hassan leaned forward despite himself. That's exactly the problem we've struggled with for weeks." Marie Boutros wasn't convinced. Even if she understands legal terminology, does she grasp the cultural implications? The historical context between our regions? Zara turned to face her directly. In perfect Lebanese Arabic, she spoke with the cadence of someone born to the mountains of Beirut. Mrs. Boutros, when your grandfather signed the 1943 National Pact, the phrase he used was La Sharqiyya la Gharbiyya, neither Eastern nor Western. He understood that Lebanon's strength came from bridging cultures, not dividing them. She switched to formal French, her accent flawless. I believe tonight's discussion honors that legacy of bridge building. Marie's face went white. That historical reference was so specific, so accurate, that only a true scholar of Lebanese political history would know it. The room's energy shifted. Suspicion gave way to grudging respect. Omar al-Rashid stood slowly. Dr. Williams, please, help us find a way forward. Through the glass doors, a figure watched from the hallway. Khalil Hassan stood motionless, his expression no longer dismissive but calculating, as if seeing something that fundamentally challenged everything he thought he knew about power and intelligence. Zara approached the whiteboard with the confidence of someone who had done this before. Her movements were fluid, purposeful, like a conductor preparing to lead an orchestra. Let's map actual needs versus the language used to describe them, she said, creating 2 columns in Arabic and English. Instead of translating word for word, she began extracting underlying intentions. Her marker moved across the board with surgical precision. When you say water infrastructure, Mr. Al-Rashid, you mean immediate relief for families walking hours for basic necessities. She drew connecting lines between concepts. When Ambassador Karam references sustainable development, he means systems that won't collapse in 5 years, leaving communities worse off than before. The adversarial atmosphere began to dissolve. Delegates leaned forward, engaging rather than defending. The issue isn't translation, Zara continued, turning to face the room. Both versions are trying to solve different aspects of the same problem. Lebanon wants long-term sustainability. Syria needs immediate implementation. These aren't contradictory. They're sequential. Hassan Mahmoud started taking notes. Marie Boutros nodded slowly, her earlier skepticism evaporating. Zara redesigned the timeline on the whiteboard. Phase 1. Immediate installation meeting Syrian needs. Phase 2. Sustainability protocols satisfying Lebanese concerns. Legal liability shifted between phases, resolving both language issues and political concerns. The genius is in the handoff, she explained. Syria leads implementation while Lebanon develops training protocols. Then, responsibility transfers as local capacity builds. She addressed specific concerns in each person's native dialect. Palestinian Arabic for one delegate, Moroccan Arabic for another, Lebanese French for Marie. She wasn't just translating, she was culturally interpreting, making each person feel heard in their own linguistic identity. This is remarkable, Ambassador Karam whispered to his aide. I've seen professional diplomatic translators with decades of experience who couldn't do what she's doing. Within 30 minutes, they had a revised framework. Water purification systems would be installed immediately, Syria's priority. Training programs would begin simultaneously, Lebanon's requirement. Legal liability was shared proportionally across implementation phases. That's when Layla al-Rashid approached the whiteboard. Dr. Williams, may I show you something? She pulled out her phone, swiping through photos of children at refugee camps, faces that could have been 8 or 18, aged by circumstances beyond their control. These are the children who will benefit from tonight's work. Zara studied each photo with intense focus. Her professional composure softened as she recognized the human cost of bureaucratic delays. How many miss school because of water collection duties? In my sector? About 60% of the girls. They're the ones who walk the farthest. Zara added a note to the timeline. Priority implementation, school-age girl safety protocols, and collection point proximity to educational facilities. Hassan stood and extended his hand. Dr. Williams, I owe you an apology. Your expertise is extraordinary. Marie Boutros added in French, You've accomplished in 1 hour what we couldn't in 3 weeks of negotiations. Omar al-Rashid's voice broke slightly as he spoke. Dr. Williams, you've just ensured that 12,000 children will have clean water by the end of next month. How do we thank someone for that? Zara set down her marker and looked around the room, at faces that had transformed from skeptical to respectful to genuinely moved. You don't thank me, she said quietly. You remember that expertise comes in unexpected packages. Next time, you look deeper before making assumptions. The squeak of marker on the whiteboard had been replaced by the rustle of papers as agreements were drafted. Translation devices sat silent on the table, no longer needed. As delegates began drafting the final agreement, Ambassador Karam approached Zara privately. Dr. Williams, I have a proposition for you, but first, I think there's someone who needs to speak with you. He nodded toward the hallway where Khalil Hassan waited, his entire worldview quietly crumbling. The meeting ended with handshakes and genuine smiles. As delegates filed out, discussing implementation details in excited clusters, Khalil Hassan entered the room. Zara was packing up her notes, still in her hotel uniform but carrying herself differently now. The invisible armor had been replaced by quiet authority. Khalil approached hesitantly, like a man walking toward his own judgment. Dr. Williams, I owe you an apology. He struggled with the words in English, then switched to Arabic. My comments earlier were the words of an ignorant man who confused wealth with wisdom. Zara looked at him steadily. No anger, no triumph, just a clear-eyed assessment. Mr. Hassan, we all make assumptions. The question is what we do when we realize we're wrong. How did you know my dialect so precisely? That Palestinian dialect is very specific to my grandmother's village near Hebron. I wrote my doctoral thesis on linguistic preservation in Palestinian diaspora communities. Your grandmother's village had a unique phonetic pattern that survived displacement. It's actually quite beautiful, a testament to cultural resilience. Khalil sat down heavily, the weight of his misconceptions settling on his shoulders. I built my entire tech empire on the belief that talent could come from anywhere. Yet tonight, I almost dismissed the most talented person in the room because of my own prejudices. Ambassador Karam, who had been listening from the doorway, entered with purposeful steps. Mr. Hassan, Dr. Williams just facilitated one of the most complex diplomatic negotiations I've seen in 30 years. And she did it during her shift as a hotel waitress. He turned to Zara. Which brings me to my proposition. The United Nations is launching a new cultural liaison program for refugee resettlement. We need someone who understands both academic frameworks and human reality. The position is based here in the city, pays well, and would allow you to continue caring for your father. Khalil looked surprised, then understanding. Your father? Zara nodded. Early-stage Alzheimer's. I read to him in Arabic every morning. It's often the only thing that reaches him now. Something shifted in Khalil's expression, recognition of a shared pain. My mother had dementia. I know that sacrifice. He paused, reaching into his jacket. Dr. Williams, I have a different proposition. He wrote a figure on the hotel's letterhead. My company is expanding into Middle Eastern markets. We need a cultural integration director, someone who can navigate not just language but cultural nuance. Zara stared at the number. It was more than she'd made in her best academic year, enough to afford the premium memory care her father needed. I need to think about this. Ambassador Karam's voice carried 3 decades of diplomatic wisdom. Dr. Williams, whatever you choose, know this. Tonight, you reminded all of us that brilliance doesn't announce itself with credentials or connections. It reveals itself through actions. The 3 of them shook hands, an unlikely alliance forged through recognition of truth. There's something else, Khalil said quietly. "Tomorrow morning, I'm giving the keynote at the International Business Summit. 500 of the most influential people in the city." He met her eyes directly. "I'd like to tell them about tonight, with your permission. It's time the world learned what real talent looks like." Later that evening, as the hotel quieted and the last guests departed, Zara and Khalil found themselves in the lobby's quiet corner. 2 coffee cups sat between them on a small marble table. The formal dynamics had dissolved into something more honest, more human. "You want to know the truth?" Khalil's voice was softer now, stripped of its earlier arrogance. "I learned English from American sitcoms as a refugee child in Jordan. For years, I was ashamed of my accent, my background." He stared into his coffee. "When I made my first million, I thought I could buy my way out of that shame." Zara recognized the pain behind his words. "But shame has a way of turning outward, doesn't it? Making us judge others the way we were afraid of being judged." "My father was a literature professor in Damascus before the war," Khalil continued. "Lost everything. His university position, his research, his sense of purpose. I swore I'd never be vulnerable like that again." He pulled out his phone, showing her a photo of an elderly Palestinian man with kind eyes and weathered hands. "Tonight, watching you command that room with quiet dignity, you reminded me of him." Zara's expression softened. "My father taught Arabic literature at a community college. When the dementia started, he'd mix up his words, become frustrated. But when I read him Rumi or Darwish, something in his eyes would clear." Her voice grew tender. "He taught me that language isn't just communication. It's a connection to who we are." Khalil's voice broke slightly. "My father died last year, still believing I was ashamed of where I came from. I never got to tell him he was wrong." Zara reached for a hotel napkin and wrote something in elegant Arabic script. She slid it across the table. "The wound is the place where the light enters you. Rumi." She looked up at him. "Your father would be proud of the man who apologized tonight, not the billionaire who built walls." Khalil stared at the napkin, then carefully folded it and placed it in his wallet next to a faded photo. "Dr. Williams, Zara, would you consider me not just an employer, but a partner in something bigger?" "What do you mean?" "What if we didn't just hire talented people from unexpected places, but actively sought them out? What if we created pathways for invisible brilliance to become visible?" Zara smiled. The first genuine smile he'd seen from her all evening. "That's a beautiful vision, Khalil. But it starts tomorrow, with how you treat the next person who serves your coffee." As they prepared to part ways, Khalil said quietly, "There's one more thing about that keynote tomorrow. I'm not speaking alone. The International Business Summit. The Grand Metropolitan's ballroom was packed with 500 CEOs, diplomats, investors, and media representatives. Power suits and strategic conversations filled every corner. Zara sat in the front row, wearing a professional blazer over her hotel uniform, a deliberate choice that would soon make perfect sense. Khalil took the stage to polite applause. "Ladies and gentlemen, I came here to speak about market expansion and cultural competency. But last night, I learned something that changed everything I thought I knew about talent recognition." The audience shifted, sensing this wouldn't be a typical keynote presentation. "Yesterday, Doctor," Zara Williams was serving refreshments at our cultural gala. He gestured toward her. What the room didn't know was that she holds a PhD from Oxford and speaks 7 languages fluently. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as hundreds of eyes turned toward Zara. Many recognized her as hotel staff. More importantly, what I didn't know was that my own prejudices nearly cost 12,000 refugee children access to clean water. The room grew tense. This was uncomfortable territory for a business conference. Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling International and known industry skeptic, stood up. Her voice cut through the whispers like a blade. Mr. Hassan, with respect, this seems like performative social responsibility. How do we know this isn't staged for media attention? Khalil looked at Zara. Dr. Williams, would you be willing to demonstrate your capabilities? Not to prove anything to anyone, but to show what we almost missed? Victoria continued, sensing an opportunity to expose what she saw as corporate theater. My company has been trying to break into the Moroccan market for 2 years. Our cultural consultants can't seem to bridge the communication gap with local partners. She pulled out her tablet, swiping to a presentation. If she's as talented as you claim, perhaps she can solve what our experts couldn't. The room went silent. This wasn't a controlled environment like the diplomatic meeting. This was public, recorded, with career-defining stakes. Cameras that had come to cover Khalil's speech were now focused on Zara. Mrs. Sterling, Zara approached the microphone calmly. May I ask what specific aspect of the Moroccan market has been challenging? We're trying to launch our education software, but every meeting ends with confusion about implementation timelines and educational priorities. Our translators say everything is correct, but nothing moves forward. Zara nodded thoughtfully. Are your meetings scheduled for specific times with structured agendas? Victoria nodded. Of course. We're professionals. And are you discussing long-term contracts in first meetings? Another nod. We need to establish terms up front. Mrs. Sterling, in Moroccan business culture, time is relational, not transactional. Scheduling a specific time without building relationships first can signal disrespect. Discussing long-term commitments before establishing trust violates cultural protocol. She turned to address the full audience. The solution isn't better translation. It's cultural restructuring. The first meeting should be social. Tea, conversation about families, shared interests. Business is discussed only after trust is established. Victoria stared at her tablet, scrolling through months of failed meeting notes. More importantly, Zara continued, Moroccan educators prioritize community impact over individual achievement. Frame your software not as productivity enhancement, but as community empowerment tools. An audience member stood up. Ahmed Ben Ali, CEO of a Moroccan investment firm, began speaking in Arabic. Everything she just said is absolutely correct. We've been waiting 2 years for Sterling to understand these principles. Zara responded in flawless Moroccan Arabic, then translated for the room. Mr. Ben Ali says he's been frustrated by Western companies who mistake directness for efficiency and speed for progress. The room transformed. Other international business leaders began asking questions. A Japanese CEO asked about cultural protocols in Tokyo. A Brazilian entrepreneur wanted advice on African markets. Zara fielded each question with specific, nuanced cultural insights that revealed years of deep study. Then Richard Blackwood stood up. The venture capitalist was notorious for his harsh assessments and aggressive questioning. This is all very impressive theater, but let's be honest. His voice carried decades of boardroom authority. She's a hotel waitress with an interesting academic background. How do we know she can actually deliver results in high-stakes business environments? The room went uncomfortably quiet. This was the moment of ultimate testing, not just of Zara's skills, but of whether the audience would accept paradigm-shifting talent regardless of its packaging. Zara didn't defend herself. Instead, she asked quietly, Mr. Blackwood, what's the biggest international deal you lost due to cultural misunderstanding? Blackwood's face reddened. That's confidential business information. I'm not asking for details. I'm asking if it happened. Because statistically, 60% of international ventures fail due to cultural miscommunication, not market conditions or financial factors. She let that sink in before continuing. The question isn't whether I can deliver results. The question is whether you're willing to recognize expertise when it doesn't come with the traditional credentials you're comfortable with. Ambassador Karam, watching from the back, began clapping. Others joined. Within moments, the entire ballroom was on their feet. As applause died down, reporters surged forward with questions. Business cards were passed to Zara from every direction. Khalil returned to the microphone. Dr. Williams has agreed to join my company as Cultural Integration Director. But more than that, we're launching the Hidden Talent Initiative, actively seeking brilliant people in unexpected places. The media frenzy was immediate. Phones came out. Social media posts began flooding with #Hidden Talent hashtags. As the crowd dispersed, Victoria Sterling approached Zara privately. Her earlier hostility had been replaced by something that looked like respect. "Dr. Williams, I need to make a confession." Her voice was quiet, meant only for Zara's ears. 20 years ago, I was a receptionist at a law firm. A black woman with a law degree from a state school overlooked for every promotion because I didn't fit the culture. She paused, emotion breaking through her professional composure. I built Sterling International specifically to prove that overlooked talent could succeed, but somewhere along the way, I became the very thing I once fought against. Victoria extended her hand. I don't just want to hire you as a consultant. I want to partner with you and Khalil to create something unprecedented. Victoria's confession hung in the air like a bridge between past and future. I want to create a talent identification network that finds brilliance wherever it exists, she continued. Not just for our companies, but as a movement. As they spoke, other business leaders approached. The energy in the ballroom had shifted from corporate networking to something electric, revolutionary. The Japanese CEO bowed slightly. Dr. Williams, I would like to discuss cultural training programs for our expansion into Middle Eastern markets. The Brazilian entrepreneur offered funding for pilot programs in South America. What had started as a keynote speech was becoming a spontaneous coalition. CNN business correspondent Sarah Lane approached with her camera crew. Dr. Williams, this story is going viral on social media. Hidden Talent is trending worldwide. How does it feel to go from serving coffee to commanding boardrooms in 24 hours? Zara's response was measured, thoughtful. Sarah, I didn't go from serving coffee to commanding boardrooms. I was always the same person with the same capabilities. What changed was that people started seeing me clearly. Sarah showed her phone screen. Thousands of comments and shares. People are posting their own stories of being underestimated. A janitor who speaks 6 languages, a cashier with an engineering degree, a security guard who's published poetry. You've started something. The social media explosion was real-time and global. Hidden talent stories poured in from every continent. A Pakistani taxi driver revealed his PhD in astrophysics. A Latina housekeeper shared her master's degree in environmental science. A Syrian refugee working at a gas station posted about his medical degree. Provost Margaret Harrison from Princeton University approached through the crowd. Dr. Williams, we've been following your story. We'd like to offer you a position as director of our new Global Cultural Competency Program. Full research funding and tenure track opportunities. Now Zara faced 3 incredible offers. Khalil's corporate position, the UN diplomatic role, and the academic opportunity. Each represented a different aspect of her talents and passions. Khalil returned with something special in his hands. A custom business card holder, engraved in Arabic and English, Dr. Zara Williams, Bridge Builder. Inside were cards with multiple titles. Cultural Integration Director, Hassan Technologies / UN Cultural Liaison / Visiting Professor, International Relations. You don't have to choose just one path, Zara. Your talents are too valuable to be confined to a single role. Ambassador Karam approached the microphone one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention. The crowd quieted, sensing something significant. What we witnessed tonight goes beyond one remarkable individual. Dr. Williams has demonstrated that our traditional recruitment and recognition systems are fundamentally flawed. He paused for effect. The United Nations will be implementing the Hidden Talent Protocol, a systematic approach to identifying and developing overlooked expertise in communities worldwide. Dr. Williams will head this initiative. Victoria Sterling took the microphone next. Sterling International pledges $10 million to fund hidden talent identification programs in underserved communities. We're not just changing our hiring practices, we're changing how we define and discover talent. The formal announcements triggered another wave of media coverage. International news outlets were picking up the story. The BBC called it the Waitress Revolution. Al Jazeera framed it as challenging Western corporate bias. As the formal events wound down, Zara's phone rang. The caller ID showed Sunrise Memory Care. "I need to go," she told the crowd of supporters. "My father is having a good day and asking for me." Khalil, Victoria, and Ambassador Karam offered to escort her to the facility. "Dr. Williams," Khalil said, "your father should know what his daughter accomplished tonight." The drive to Sunrise Memory Care was quiet, each of them processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. Not just a business deal or diplomatic success, but a fundamental shift in how talent could be recognized and valued. At the facility, Professor David Williams sat by his window, lucid and alert. When Zara entered wearing her blazer and hotel uniform combination, his eyes cleared with recognition. "Zara," he said in Arabic, "you sound different today." "Stronger." She sat beside him and began reciting the Rumi poem they'd shared that morning. He joined in, his voice strong and clear, the fog of illness temporarily lifted. "Baba," she responded in Arabic, "today I remembered everything you taught me about the power of words to build bridges." Khalil, Victoria, and Ambassador Karam watched from the doorway as father and daughter spoke together in the language that connected them across illness and time. Professor Williams took Zara's hand and said clearly, "My daughter, the bridge builder. I always knew the world would see you as I do." Outside the facility, news vans had gathered. The story had exploded across international media, BBC, Al Jazeera, CNN International, all covering the waitress who changed everything. Global response was immediate and overwhelming. University representatives announced new scholarship programs. Major corporations pledged to revise hiring practices. The State Department expressed interest in cultural competency training for diplomatic staff. Hotel General Manager Robert Brooks arrived with his entire staff. "Dr. Williams, we'd be honored if you'd accept the position of Cultural Affairs Director. Your uniform from tonight will be displayed in our lobby as a reminder that excellence comes in many forms." The ripple effect was already beginning. Local news interviewed other hotel staff who revealed their own hidden talents. The housekeeper with a master's degree in environmental science. The valet who was a published historian. The chef spoke 5 languages and held a degree in international relations. As evening fell, Zara stood in the hotel lobby where it all began. She was surrounded by symbols of her journey, the diplomatic agreement that would help thousands, business cards from global leaders, and most importantly, a photo of her father smiling clearly for the first time in months. The story reached refugee camps where Layla al-Rashid showed children Zara's photo. "This is the woman who helped bring you clean water." She reminds us that our voices matter no matter where we stand. The transformation was complete, but grounded. Within hours, Zara had gone from invisible to indispensable, but more importantly, she had sparked a global conversation about recognizing talent in unexpected places. The hotel lobby's marble floors still gleamed under crystal chandeliers. But now they reflected something different. The light of possibility, the recognition that brilliance exists everywhere, waiting to be seen. 6 months later, The transformation was complete, but grounded in reality. Zara worked part-time across all three roles: corporate cultural director, UN liaison, and university professor. Her father had moved to a premium care facility where she visited daily, their Arabic conversations a constant source of connection. The Hidden Talent Initiative had identified over 2,000 overlooked professionals in unexpected positions. A former janitor now led environmental sustainability at a Fortune 500 company. A parking attendant with an MBA launched a successful consulting firm. A grocery store clerk with a chemistry PhD headed product development for a major pharmaceutical company. The cultural shift was measurable. Khalil's company had become a model for inclusive talent recognition, expanding successfully into 12 international markets, using culturally informed approaches. Victoria Sterling's business flourished using the Moroccan strategies Zara had outlined, leading to partnerships across North Africa. The UN's refugee resettlement program had improved dramatically with better cultural mediation. Clean water flowed in camps where Layla al-Rashid sent weekly updates, photos of children attending school instead of walking miles for water. Khalil, genuinely transformed, spoke at conferences about the arrogance of assumptions. He'd funded language preservation programs in Palestinian communities and established scholarships for refugee children. Zara taught me that wealth without wisdom is just expensive ignorance, he'd say, the folded Rumi poem still in his wallet. Professor Williams had good days and difficult ones, but the Arabic poetry sessions continued. On his clearest days, he asked about his daughter's important work building bridges between peoples. The story had been covered in Harvard Business Review, featured in documentary films, and studied in business schools worldwide as a case study in unconscious bias and talent recognition. Despite global attention, Zara still enjoyed simple pleasures: a perfectly prepared cup of coffee, served with genuine respect between equals. 3 major universities had established Williams Fellowships for overlooked scholars. The State Department implemented mandatory cultural competency training. The hotel industry launched recognition programs for employee expertise beyond job descriptions. Standing in her father's room one evening, reading him Arabic poetry as sunset light streamed through windows, Zara reflected on the journey. "Baba, remember when you told me that words have the power to change worlds?" You were right. Her father, in a moment of clarity, responded, "My daughter, you didn't change the world with words. You changed it by refusing to be invisible." The scene transitions to everyday moments: people in service positions, immigrants, overlooked individuals in every community. Zara's story isn't unique because of what she could do. The narrator's voice returns, calm and powerful. It's unique because someone finally noticed. How many brilliant minds serve your coffee, clean your offices, park your cars, or ring up your groceries? How many solutions to complex problems walk past you every day? Invisible because they don't match your expectations of what expertise looks like. Tomorrow, learn the name of someone who serves you. Ask about their background, their interests, their dreams. Listen not with curiosity, but with recognition that talent doesn't announce itself with credentials. Zara changed Khalil's perspective in a single evening. Khalil changed an industry. An industry can change a culture, and a culture can change the world. The question isn't whether you'll encounter hidden talent. You will, probably today. The question is whether you'll have the wisdom to recognize it and the courage to act on that recognition. The final shot returns to the hotel lobby where a small plaque now reads, "Excellence comes in every form. Look deeper, see clearer, build bridges." But the real change isn't in the plaque. It's in how people interact. Guests asking servers about their day, really listening to the answers. Hotel staff sharing stories about their education, their dreams, their expertise beyond their uniforms. Share this story. Tag someone who's been underestimated. Use hashtag hidden talent to tell us about brilliance you've discovered in unexpected places. The next time someone serves you, really see them. The next time you meet someone whose accent sounds different, whose job seems simple, whose background looks unfamiliar, remember Zara. Remember that some of the most extraordinary people in the world are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with the wisdom to recognize their worth. If this story moved you, subscribe for more accounts of ordinary people doing extraordinary things when given extraordinary recognition. Because the truth is, talent doesn't need permission to exist, but it needs permission to be seen.